in your opinion, how much do people need to know the context that Jesus lived in order to understand him and his message?
That's a really good question. I think that some of the context, one, you need context to understand anything, you need to have it in a context. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to know all the archaeology or all the historical background, because the first place to get context is by just reading what we have in the Gospels and the Bible and the Old Testament, because you pick up context, it makes sense as you put it in this big narrative, or any incident in the Gospel starts to make sense in context of the whole Gospel. So, and for most people, they have some idea of context in our culture anyway. If you were going to a remote culture that didn't have any access to Western type culture, then then they might completely misread the Gospel because they haven't got any of the rudiments. But so the first thing is to get hold of context by reading and rereading the scripture itself. So that's why it's important, if you're going to be serious about things, you need to read the whole Bible as regularly as you can. Although I've only once done it in a year. It usually takes me 18 months when I do that, and I don't do it all the time. I have attention deficit when it comes to spiritual growth. I can't keep with one program. So I think that's important, but there is huge insight that you can gain from other people who know more about the historical background, or have thought more deeply about the interconnections between things that happen in the Gospels and especially the Old Testament. So I've just read a book by Richard B. Hayes, which is called Reading Backwards. And it's the smaller of a number of works he's done in more depth. But he picks out how each of the Gospel writers shapes their Gospel and uses not just quotes from the Old Testament, but allusions that the first readers would have just got, and we often miss unless we're really steeped in the Old Testament. So something like that's really useful. And it's not changing the meaning of what's there, but getting the meaning that was placed there. And clearly history makes a huge difference. So if you have no idea of Old Testament history, no idea of what happened between the Testaments, then you will miss the dynamic and the drama of what's going on. Because, you know, I'd say in our recent history, if you talked about New Labour, some of us would remember, oh, that's what Tony Blair and that group did with the Labour movement. But you say that in the United States, and they would have a completely different understanding of that. So it's similarly with the scripture, it's really helpful. One of the dangers and one of the areas of debates are how much could some of the background books you can read about background overturn established interpretations of scripture. And I think that's where you have to be really careful, because in the end, it's scripture in and of itself will tie you down to constrain certain ways of understanding it. Those other things can add color and depth and nuance, but it would be very rare that they totally overturned what the church has thought for 2,000 years, if not never overturn it.